Imagine standing before a massive stone gate, right at the very edge of a vast desert. The sun is just beginning to set, turning the sky into these deep golden hues, and it's casting, incredibly long shadows across the sand.
Oh, yeah. You can almost feel the air shift.
Exactly. And right there, slowly emerging from the heat haze, is a caravan of camels. They're covered in the thick dust of the road,
Mm.
and they're carrying raw spices that you have literally never smelled before. Plus, travelers from lands that no one in your city has ever even imagined.
Because it's not just dust and trade goods they're bringing with them, right? They're bringing entirely new realities.
Yes, stepping into this reality, the world of Marco Polo, it means stepping into a place where the horizon is not some terrifying limit. It is an invitation.
A literal invitation.
Right. This is a world where curiosity actively crosses borders and where every single journey physically expands the map of human understanding. So today, in this deep dive, we are walking straight through that stone gate. We're going to explore what the people in this world believe, how they survive, and how their reality actually functions when curiosity becomes the absolute driving force of existence.
And to really enter this space, I mean, we have to start with the foundational mindset. The absolute bedrock belief here is that the world is just exponentially larger, richer, and more intricately connected than anyone trapped within their own city walls can possibly comprehend.
Which is a huge mental shift.
Oh, massive. In this place, curiosity isn't just a fleeting feeling or like a casual hobby. Curiosity is the primary engine of discovery, opportunity, and honestly, survival.
Okay, let's unpack this mindset, because an engine requires fuel, right? What is actually driving these people to leave everything they know and just, walk into the desert?
Well, it's a deep, burning desire to see beyond their immediate boundaries. They are not wandering aimlessly just to check a box or claim they've been somewhere.
Right, it's not a vacation.
Exactly. They want to understand the actual mechanics of other societies, like how do these strangers live? How do they organize their markets? How do they process their resources? The goal is to deeply observe those mechanisms and bring that hard-won knowledge back home. It's about actively participating in a journey that stitches distant parts of the world together.
Which brings up a quiet, but, an incredibly radical assumption that this world completely upends. We are so conditioned to think that power is purely physical. That power means standing armies, fortified walls, the ability to conquer.
Right.
But here, people operate on the belief that stories, information, and sharp observations are actually as powerful as armies.
What's fascinating here is that it's a profound shift in how you calculate value. Yes, an army can forcefully take a physical location, but a meticulous observation.
Like what? What kind of observation?
Say, noticing how a distant culture uses a specific route to transport salt, or how they forge a stronger type of steel. That observation can capture the imagination of an entire culture. It can build a bridge of trade that brings in wealth for generations, far outlasting any military occupation. Information is the highest currency.
Wait, I want to push back on this a little bit.
Yeah.
We usually think of expanding maps directly through conquest, right? You draw a line, you bring in the troops, you claim the territory.
Sure, that's the standard model.
But you're saying that in this specific worldview, cultures hold wisdom that can be learned, not conquered. But Marco Polo is traveling through the middle of the most massive, terrifying empire the world has ever seen.
Absolutely.
But an empire literally built on conquest. So how does this peaceful, eternal student mindset square with that violent reality?
I mean, that is the crucial paradox of this world. The overarching empire does secure the territory through force. That is undeniable. But for the traveler moving through that system, the identity completely shifts.
Because they aren't the army.
Exactly. You cannot conquer the unknown elements of the world by yourself. If you try to fight your way across a continent alone, you will die. Therefore, you are forced to become a student.
Wow.
It takes immense, staggering human courage to walk into an unfamiliar culture unarmed, carrying nothing but a genuine desire to understand. You are entirely vulnerable.
But that vulnerability is a tool.
Yes. That specific vulnerability, the conscious choice to arrive as a guest rather than a threat, is exactly what opens the doors to the knowledge you're seeking.
So if you're walking into the absolute unknown as an unarmed student, how do you actually survive? You're surrounded by different languages, different religions, different social rules.
It's incredibly dangerous if you don't know what you're doing.
Right. That brings us to how people actually live here, their daily method. And from what I see, it stems from an intense, almost rigid discipline and a profound respect for the unknown.
Discipline is exactly the right word. In this world, the cardinal rule of survival is to observe deeply before you judge.
Which goes against human nature.
Completely. Think about it. When you encounter a practice that is totally alien to your own customs, the immediate instinctual reflex is to label it as wrong or, even dangerous.
Yeah, get defensive.
Exactly. But here, the discipline is to violently suppress that reflex. You hold back your judgment. You take the slow, deliberate time to sit quietly and watch.
Give me a concrete example of that. Like, what does that discipline actually look like in practice when you're on the road?
Let's look at something as fundamental as heating a home. A traveler from an area that relies entirely on wood fires suddenly encounters a society that digs black stones out of the mountains and burns them.
You mean coal?
Yes, coal. Now, if you lack discipline, you might look at burning rocks and call it dark magic.
Right, you panic.
You might refuse to go near it, declare the people barbaric, and retreat to your familiar worldview. But in this world, the disciplined observer stops, watches the stones burn longer and hotter than wood, and realizes the incredible utility of it.
They don't just run away.
No, they observe the mining process. They note how it is transported. They don't judge it. They record the mechanics.
Because they aren't kicking the door down and shouting, do things my way. They are adapting.
Exactly. Forcing your own cultural norms upon others is the fastest possible way to get completely shut out, or worse.
Much worse, yeah.
Instead, successful travelers here operate on a totally different currency. They might be hauling physical trade goods, sure, but the real underlying currency that keeps them alive is honor, hospitality, and reciprocal trust.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like navigating a highly complex ecosystem where every single misstep has a cascading consequence.
Oh, a huge ripple effect.
Yeah, like if you show up in a new city demanding things be done your way, demanding the food be cooked like it is back home, or treating the local customs with contempt, you aren't just being rude, you are cutting your own throat.
Literally or metaphorically.
Right. The hosts will close their doors, the merchants will refuse your goods, and you will be completely isolated. But if you sit, listen, learn the local script, and share your own stories with genuine respect, suddenly the entire machinery of that society opens up to you.
And this method, this adaptability, is the visible expression of their entire worldview. You absolutely cannot connect distant lands if you are arrogant. It physically will not work.
It's an incompatible trait.
Totally. In this world, adaptability in unfamiliar places isn't just a polite personality trait that makes you pleasant at dinner. It is a vital, non-negotiable survival skill. If you cannot adapt, you cannot build reciprocal trust. And without trust, you have nothing to fall back on when things go wrong.
And things always go wrong. So that transition from personal habits like holding back judgment and adapting to the grand, sprawling scale of the world is where things get truly wild.
It scales up massively.
Because we are just talking about one lone wanderer here. We're talking about a vast, churning network of people traveling, observing, and trading across thousands of miles. If everyone is just out there moving around, how does it not immediately collapse into total chaos?
Well, it doesn't collapse because there is a highly structured, hidden infrastructure keeping this entire world working.
A hidden infrastructure.
Yeah, it's built on facilitating movement and securing reliance. We are talking about physically marked, safe routes that cross some of the most treacherous landscapes on Earth, and reliable rest houses placed at exact intervals where weary travelers and animals need them.
So it's not just wild frontier.
Not at all. This world requires a massive, engineered system to keep the arteries of trade flowing.
Okay, let's unpack this system. What really fascinates me is the flow of information. Because in this world, information actually travels significantly faster than the caravans carrying the goods. How does that physically happen?
It happens through an incredibly sophisticated relay system known as the YAM.
A YAM, okay.
Yeah. Imagine a vast network of stations placed roughly 25 miles apart along all the major routes. Each station is fully stocked with fresh, fast horses, supplies, and dedicated riders.
So it's essentially a massive continental pony express.
Exactly, but on a scale that is hard to fathom. When an urgent piece of news, a military order, or like a vital market update needs to move, a rider gallops at full speed to the first station.
And then what?
They wear belts with bells on them so the station hears them coming from a distance. The moment they arrive, a fresh horse is already saddled and waiting. The rider swaps mounts in seconds and keeps going, or hands the message to a new rider.
That is incredibly efficient.
Operating day and night, through storms and darkness, information can travel over 200 miles in a single day.
Over 200 miles. That completely changes the dynamic of the world. long before a heavy, slow-moving caravan full of silk or spices physically arrives at the city gates. The stories of what happened on the road, the shifts in the local markets, the news of distant political uprisings, all of that information has already raced ahead.
Precisely. The system ensures that the people managing the cities and the markets are never caught off guard. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this world functions seamlessly across these massive distances, not just because of the relay stations, but because of shared, unified systems of trust.
Right.
There is a deep, abiding respect for agreements, even when those agreements cross completely different populations and entirely different systems of local law.
So what does this all mean? Like, how do you actually enforce a contract when you're a merchant thousands of miles away from your own home, standing in a foreign bazaar? There are no police officers out in the deep desert to make sure someone actually pays you for your goods.
Well, the secret is that the trust network itself is the enforcing system. When different cultures intersect, it is the mutual benefit of honest trade that creates a web of reliability.
Okay, I have to stop you there because that sounds a little too utopian.
Fair enough.
We are talking about human beings, and human beings cheat. Are you telling me that a merchant honors a deal purely out of the goodness of his heart? Isn't there a massive, terrifying authority backing up that trust with the explicit threat of total destruction if you disrupt the peace?
That is a very sharp point, and you are absolutely right. The foundation of this piece, the framework that allows the trust to exist, is an iron-fisted imperial law.
That is.
The overarching authority secures the roads, suppresses banditry, and punishes theft with brutal severity. If you disrupt the flow of trade, the empire will crush you. But, and this is the vital distinction, while fear of the empire creates the safety of the road, it does not create the deals in the market.
I see. So the empire builds the arena, but the merchants still have to play the game.
Exactly. The imperial threat cannot force a merchant in a distant city to give you a fair price for your spices, or force them to accurately grade the quality of your silk. That interpersonal level of commerce relies entirely on reputation.
So you have to be trustworthy to survive.
Yes. The world works because people actively choose to honor their word to protect their standing in the network. They realize that a broken promise doesn't just mean a slightly better profit today. It destroys all future opportunities.
Because of the yam. The fast horses.
Exactly. Because of that rapid information relay we talked about, if you cheat someone, the news of your dishonesty will reach the next city before you do. The network simply ejects you if you cannot be trusted.
And nothing symbolizes that intersection of imperial authority and enforced trust quite like the VIP passport of this world. Let's talk about that physical object because it is brilliant.
Oh, you're talking about the paisa.
Yes.
Yeah.
The prize. Explain what this object is and how it functions as the ultimate skeleton key to this entire world.
The paisa is a physical tablet, usually made of gold or silver, depending on your rank. It often features inscriptions of tigers or falcons, and it is worn visibly by the traveler. It is granted directly by the supreme ruler of the empire.
And what happens when a traveler walks into a station or a city wearing one of these golden tablets?
It acts as an absolute command. It guarantees the bearer safe passage, demands that local authorities provide them with fresh horses, food, and guides, and completely exempts them from tolls and taxes.
That's incredible power.
When a local governor sees a golden paisa, they are not just looking at a wealthy traveler, they are looking at an extension of the emperor's own will. To deny the bearer is to defy the sovereign.
It is the ultimate diplomatic immunity mixed with like an unlimited credit card. And it relies entirely on the fact that everyone across thousands of miles recognizes the authority behind that piece of metal. Which brings up another mind-bending concept of trust in this world, which is the currency itself.
Yes, the use of paper money. This is something that completely shatters the boundaries of travelers who have only ever traded with heavy gold or silver coins.
Let's unpack this mechanism. Because as someone who has never seen it, the idea of paper money is absurd. How does a piece of bark hold the value of actual physical gold?
Well, it works entirely through state-backed trust. The ruler issues these beautifully stamped pieces of paper made from the inner bark of mulberry trees. They are signed by multiple officials and stamped with the ruler's vermilion seal.
And people just accept it.
They have to. The ruler decrees, under penalty of death, that this paper is legal tender and must be accepted for goods. Furthermore, the state guarantees that if you bring this paper to the royal treasury, you can exchange it for physical gold or silver.
So the paper is just a lightweight, highly transportable representation of the heavy metals sitting securely in a vault somewhere else.
Exactly. And once the merchants realize that the paper is universally accepted within the empire, they embrace it. It is vastly safer and easier to carry a stack of paper across a mountain range than dragging chests full of heavy coins that attract bandits.
But it requires massive trust.
Absolute, unshakable trust in the stability of the issuing government. If the government falls, the paper becomes worthless bark.
This self-policing world, based on the necessity of connection and backed by systemic trust, leads us to how this world actually grows.
Yeah.
Because the map doesn't just randomly expand. There is a clear, repeatable cycle of progress here.
It is a very deliberate, iterative chain of actions. First, you gather the courage to venture beyond the known boundaries of your own culture.
Right, the hardest step.
Second, you observe deeply, utilizing that strict discipline of holding back your own cultural judgments. Third, you meticulously record what is actually real. You don't make up fables or rely on hearsay. You document the strict truth of the mechanics you see.
Just the facts.
Yes. Fourth, you engage in honest trade and build reciprocal trust with the locals. And finally, through that established trust, you physically connect those distant worlds back into the main network.
I love the dual truth of how this world operates. Every single journey carries crucial knowledge, and every single connection creates a new opportunity. You absolutely never have one without the other. They feed into each other in an endless loop.
And that loop culminates in the ultimate big idea of this worldview. The map grows through human courage. The world simply belongs to those who actively seek it out with open minds, an honest purpose, and steady, disciplined steps.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about what a map actually is in this reality. It's not just a static piece of parchment with ink lines drawn on it, mapping out rivers and mountains. A map here is a living, breathing record of human connection.
It's a living document.
Exactly. It's a network graph showing relationships, safe paths, hostile territories, resources, the blank spaces on the map, the areas that haven't been colored in yet. They aren't terrifying voids filled with monsters. They are literal invitations.
Yeah.
They're empty spaces actively waiting for someone brave enough to go out, observe them, and connect them to the rest of the world.
And look at how this vast, interconnected system ultimately teaches the individual traveler. It is a beautiful progression. Exploration turns physical distance into understanding. You cross a brutal desert, you survive the elements, and suddenly the terrifying unknown becomes a known variable.
And
then, that hard-won understanding turns directly into prosperity. When you truly understand how a foreign culture operates, you can trade with them fairly, you can share new technologies with them, and both of your lives are permanently enriched.
it is a deeply optimistic way to view reality. It's a world where stepping into the unknown is consistently rewarded with growth, both for the individual traveler and for the entire connected network of humanity. And that brings us to why this deeply matters to you, listening right now.
Because this timeless world, this specific reality of open-minded exploration, of seeing the horizon as an invitation rather than a wall, is always available for you to step into.
The willingness to deeply observe before passing judgment, the conscious choice to connect rather than attempt to conquer, that is a profoundly powerful way to navigate your own life, regardless of where you are.
This raises an important question about the nature of our own limits. Every single person has boundaries. They might be physical boundaries, like the edges of the town you grew up in.
Or mental boundaries.
Right, the comfortable limits of what you think you already understand about the world. Or they might be social boundaries, the specific types of people you usually interact with on a daily basis.
The map of your own life only expands when you gather the courage to step past those personal boundaries. That is the only mechanism by which your personal world becomes larger, richer, and more intricately connected.
It really is.
So think about that massive stone gate we mentioned at the very beginning of our journey today. The sun is setting, the dust is settling, and the path forward is wide open. If you were to step outside your own boundaries today, what is one thing you would choose to truly understand rather than conquer?